All right, we are into the second round of the NHL playoffs. A lot of people have complained so far that the first round was a little bit boring, but in my opinion, that was kind of expected. I think this playoff is still going to be really, really good, but there were a couple teams kind of in the lower end that you knew were going to be first round exits, and for the most part, nothing was really surprising. I think this kind of went as expected. If you guys are looking at my bracket, I actually went 8 for 8 predicting the teams that I thought would win the series. I went, 4 for 8 predicting the games. I like that the bracket does this. Obviously, kind of hard to guess, but I'm pretty happy getting 8 for 8 into the second round. So for this video, I'm not going to talk as much previewing the second round. I'm going to keep my picks. Do I feel totally confident in them going forward? Not 100%, but we're gonna stick with it, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the first round matchups, and we're gonna start with the Dallas Stars taking down the Vegas Golden Knights in 7 games. As you can see, I definitely underrated Vegas. I had them losing in 5. I think the big thing for me was worrying about all the chemistry coming in because Vegas obviously did so much at the deadline. They got Noah Hannafin, they got Anthony Mantha, who didn't even play the full series. They got Tomas Hertl as well. How are they going to come in and adjust to such an important piece of Mark Stone, who came back from LTIR? Stone was terrific all series long. It seemed like he was a factor. Vegas obviously put up a good fight. Ottinger started the series pretty badly. Those first 2 games when they lost in Dallas, Otter wasn't very good. Last 5 games, they'll listen to this. 941, 941, 926, 966, 957. Obviously, we know what Ottinger can do in the playoffs. He's been fantastic the last 2 years, even though Dallas has only made the third round once. But he came through in a big way once again, and Dallas escapes the series that'll look like they're in pretty big peril. And it's really hard to lose the first 2 games at home and then go on to win a 7-game series, but they did it. One guy that was really impressive, Wyatt Johnson. We're talking about a potential breakout star this playoffs. Every year that you have a couple of them. I go back to the Blues in 2019. Jordan Binnington was obviously the huge one. But man, Wyatt Johnson was fantastic in this, really carried a lot of the offense for Dallas, scored that OT winner to help get him back into the series in Vegas. And the Stars are looking very, very good. They're going to move on to play Colorado, who takes down Winnipeg in 5 games. I had these series flipped, actually. I had Colorado winning this series in 7. But Winnipeg's got to be the biggest disappointment in the first round. We talked so much about how good their defense was. Connor Hellebuck probably still going to win the Vezina Trophy. He wasn't at his best, but the defense in general, 28 goals given up in 5 games. I think there was a stat saying that they were the first team ever to give up 5 goals in each of their first 5 playoff games. That's just not sustainable. You're not going to win that. If you're going to beat a team like Colorado, who's so high-powered, high-octane, you're going to have to win those trap games, those 2-1, those 3-2 games. The only game they won was game 1. They won it 7-6. That wasn't sustainable. They aren't going to win that game. And, this is a team that really should have translated well into the playoffs. It's really confusing to see why they flamed out this badly. And it's the end of the road for Rick Bowness. Rick Bowness is retiring. He announced it yesterday. So now there's a little bit of uncertainty. Where are the Jets going to go now with their head coaching search? Most of the teams should stay intact. They're still looking good, having traded Pierre-Luc Dubois. They've signed Mark Scheifele long-term. They signed Hellebuck long-term. So really curious to see where they go from here. But all the credit in the world to Colorado. I think they might be the most impressive team in the first round. They felt off this year. It's really hard to say for as good as Nathan McKinnon was. It just didn't feel like the same Avs teams as the past couple years. Obviously no Landeskog for a second year in a row. That could be a part. But, man, when they get to this point, you just can't underestimate them. Dallas, Colorado is going to be such a good series, and I can't wait to see that one play out. That's it for the Central Division. Moving on now, we've got the Pacific matchups. Vancouver took down the Predators in 6 games. This is kind of, honestly, the word I would use was grimy. It was kind of a grit and grind series. Not the prettiest style of hockey, but it's kind of what playoff hockey brings to the table. And I think this is still a good season for Nashville. Obviously, I don't think a lot of people had them in the playoffs, let alone going on that absolute heater that they went on in the second half of the season to even get to this point. I don't think you can be obviously you can be disappointed in the result, but I don't think you can be too disappointed in the performance. But how about Vancouver? So much of the playoffs just has to do with finding ways to win. I like Vancouver's depth scoring. I like the team that they've assembled. They're still pretty early in their window. No one expected them to be this good this early. But talk about the goaltending, man. 3 goalies that they went through in 6 games, and they still managed to find a way to win. I was so concerned with them after Thatcher Demko went down. But Artur Silovs, I might be mispronouncing that. A shutout in Game 6, that 1-0 game. Just talk about an unsung hero for Vancouver. Just a resilient hockey team. Really impressive to see what they were able to do in the first round. But man, do they have a challenge coming up. Because it's the Edmonton Oilers. 3rd year in a row, they beat the Kings. 2022, they won in 7. Last year, they won in 6. This year, just 5 games to knock out the LA Kings. We're talking about Leafs-Bruins territory at this point. Last year, the Leafs obviously have been snake bit against the Bruins, for example. Last year, it felt like they built a team to play Boston because of how badly they've had their number in the past few years. Obviously, it didn't happen. They played Florida, and they got waxed, in part because of that. But where do the Kings go from here? They're still a good team. You're looking at playing the Oilers in the first or second round, if you get to the second round, for a lot of years coming up. And how are you going to get there? How are you going to get over that hump? They got goalied in a game. How often do we see the Edmonton Oilers goaling a team? You don't see it. They've had goaltender issues so much the past few years, and Stuart Skinner put up a masterpiece in that 1-0 win. Goaltending is obviously an issue for the Kings. Do they go get a guy like Jordan Binnington? They try to get Linus Ullmark at the deadline. It didn't work. But, if you're the Kings, it's got to be a really frustrating result considering how good they were at the start of the year. In November, me and a lot of people, I had them making it out of the West. They were playing that well with Cam Talbot patrolling the net. He fell off a little bit at the end of the year. But just a really disappointing result for the Kings. But again, credit to the Oilers. This is some of the best depth scoring I think the Oilers have had in the McDraisaitl era. McDavid and Draisaitl, they were both great in the series, but it didn't feel like they had the same offensive burden that they've had in years past. They've had unbelievable numbers, but now it feels like they don't have to carry the weight as much as they have in years past. And I think that's scary for them. I think that's just going to help them preserve their energy a little bit as they go along. The Oilers, I would be really scared of the Oilers if I were the Canucks. I still have the Canucks winning the series. Demko, I think the report is that he's out until at least Game 4. Really curious to see how Vancouver is able to respond against such a high-octane Oilers team, because it's really, talk about 2 different teams playing the Predators and then playing the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl Oilers. It's just a complete 180, but that's going to be a really good matchup. The West is shaping up to be just absolutely fantastic. All 4 of these teams, I think it's pretty safe to say the 4 best teams from the West are still alive, and I could see any single one of them making the Stanley Cup final. Moving on to the Eastern Conference now. I felt like we saw the beginning of the end. I had the Florida Panthers winning this series in 6 games. They only needed 5 to take down the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I compare it to the Penguins getting swept by the Islanders in 2019. The Penguins had their back-to-back cups, lost in the second round 2018 to the Capitals, who went on to win it all. And then in 2019 to the Islanders, they just got completely shut down, got swept 4-0. I think Crosby might have had 1 assist or something like that in that game. And it just felt like the beginning of the end. I feel like we saw that with the Lightning. And honestly, it doesn't really feel like they did a whole lot that was wrong. Kucherov, I think, had 7 assists, no goals. Their top guys played well. Steven Stamkos had 5 goals in 5 games. The Panthers are just simply better than them. They've just simply gotten replaced as the top dog. And I think wild card is probably this team's peak going forward, because the Panthers are still going to be very good. Their window is just getting started. The Bruins are still good. The Leafs are still good. The Red Wings, the Sabres, the Senators are all trying to get there. The Senators hired Travis Green. We'll see how that goes. But the Red Wings just missed out this year. The Sabres, this should have been the year. They missed it this year. They still have a little bit of a ways to go, but it feels like they're on the come up. And what do the Lightning have? It feels like they're on the downturn. What's going to happen with Steven Stamkos is going to be really interesting. It's hard to imagine him playing in a different for a different team, but I really wonder if this is the last we've seen of Steven Stamkos on the Lightning. It'll be tough to see. Obviously, he had a great run, 2 Stanley Cups, the Rocket Richard, being the captain, all that he's gone through to get back to this level has been really cool to see. But a lot of questions for the Lightning. Another one is Andrei Vasilevsky. He had a bad year for his standards. Obviously, he had the injury, had a sub 900 save percentage in this round. A couple years ago, he was the clear-cut best goalie in the league, and it feels like he's kind of got that spotlight taken away from him from guys like Shesterkin having a monster year, Connor Hellebuck this year. I really wonder what's the outlook for Vasilevsky look like. He got drafted in 2013. I think he's got to be 29, 30. If I had to guess, I don't have that in front of me right now. Have we seen the best of Vasilevsky, or does he still have more to give? Is going to be really, really interesting to see. But, man, the Panthers, the way they played, there's not a lot of teams that are going to beat them when they're at their best. We saw playoff Carter Verhaeghe show up once again. There's just some things you can count on. Me and my buddies were texting that game that went to overtime. Basically, Verhaeghe or the field, who's going to score the OT winner? Of course it was Carter Verhaeghe. So just really impressive stuff from the Panthers. Last year it felt like almost a fluke that they made it to the Cup final as an 8 seed. No fluke this year. They are legit. They are going to be really tough to beat, and it's going to be the Boston Bruins having a chance to do that. They take down the Leafs in 7 games. I nailed this series. Pretty easy to predict knowing this rivalry. And I think we definitely need to take some time talking about this series because for the Toronto Maple Leafs, the most talked about team in the NHL, it's over. The Core 4 era, it's over. You can't go into next year without making massive sweeping changes. I'm talking Sheldon Keefe is gone. Brendan Shanahan might be gone. I think it's justified. And one of the big pieces is gone. I think Mitch Marner is probably going to get traded this year. Wouldn't be surprised to see John Tavares also get traded in the offseason. The Shanahan plan, the Core 4 era, whatever you want to call it, there was a lot of steps to get to where they wanted to be. They completed the first step ahead of schedule in 2017. They got good again. They went from last in the league to making the playoffs. 7 years later, what have they accomplished? They've made the second round one time last year, won 1 game, and got shelled by the Panthers. Is that what you want? Is that the outlook for this team? All the star potential that you have on this team, Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Marner, Tavares, all making over $10 million now that Nylander got his bag. Just the aura of the Maple Leafs, just this huge talked about market. The Core 4 era, whatever you want to call it, the Core 4 era, the Shanahan plan, I'm talking about Lob City levels, one of the biggest failures in NHL history. It's a failure. Regular season success, yeah, they've been really good in the regular season. You don't build a team, you don't make all these changes, you don't sign all these big pieces to get 105 points in the regular season every year. You get them, you make these moves to beat Boston once, not to lose to them 3 times. You do it to beat the Canadiens when you're up 3-1 in a series at your home rink when you should, at minimum, make the conference finals. You do it to beat the Lightning in 2022 when they went to the Stanley Cup final. That was your shot. All of these opportunities that they had, and they failed year in and year out. It's insanity at this point. It's a failure. 17 lost in the first round. Ahead of schedule, 18 lost to the Bruins in 7. Probably still ahead of schedule. 19, same thing. Getting frustrated then. Fire Mike Babcock. Sheldon Keefe comes in. 2020, complete loss. Lose to his Zamboni driver. Lose to the Blue Jackets in the bubble. Basically don't even make the playoffs. That was before the first round. 21, 3-1 to the Canadiens. Blow it. 22, up 3-2 to the Lightning. Blow it. 23, made the second round. Yippee! 1 win. And then this year, same thing. What's it going to take to change? What's it going to take to get over that hump? No one is blameless in this. The players aren't blameless. Ownership's not blameless. Shanahan's not blameless. Dubas isn't blameless. Treliving just got here and he's not blameless. You know why? Because they're worse this year than they were last year. It's a failure. It's over. It's a disaster. You have to move on. And I'm not a Leafs hater. I'm a fan, as a fan of the game of hockey, someone that loves the NHL this much, it's just brutally frustrating. All the hype that this team gets, some deserve, some not. And it's the same thing every year. I said as a joke, you have to say Bruins in 7. And what happened? They won in 7, literally the exact same. The series played out the exact same as 2018. Look at each individual game. The Leafs lost 1, lost, 1-1, leading in the third period in Game 7, and they lost. It's done. You have to move on. But enough about the Leafs. Bruins, obviously, almost blew another 3-1 lead. Everyone was talking about probably going to cost Jim Montgomery his job if they did so. They didn't. David Pastrnak with an unbelievable play. That was a great pass by Lindholm. The dagger in Game 7 after he got called out, by the way. Montgomery said after Game 6, asking about the big guys, Marchand's kind of giving a spark, but Pastrnak has to step up. I mean, what's better than stepping up in Game 7 in overtime? I love that. That's a coach that has the trust of his team to be able to call someone out like that and get that kind of response. I think that's great. Jeremy Swayman, by the way, I think he might be the MVP of the first round. He was fantastic. They went to Ullmark for Game 2. They lost. They went right back to Swayman. He was lights out in Games 3 and 4. Really kind of put a stranglehold on that series. Obviously almost gave it up. 2 low-scoring games. Can't really put against Swayman. He was great in Game 7. Goaltending's huge in the playoffs. If you're going to beat the Panthers, you're going to need some lockdown goaltending, and Swayman is playing some of the best hockey in his career. And what I don't understand about these playoffs, by the way, the Bruins, their series ended on Saturday, and they had Game 1 against Florida yesterday on Monday. They won, 5-1? Looked very, very good. I was shocked at that. Really cool to see Brandon Carlo come back, see that spark that it gave that locker room. That was really cool to see. But either way, the Bruins had one day off in between their series. The Canucks and Oilers have both been done for about a week, and they don't start their series until Wednesday. I don't really understand that, but I'm not the one that makes the schedule. It's just something that seemed weird to me. But we're going to move on now. These two are the most predictable series, in my opinion. The Metropolitan Division. I gave the Capitals one game against the Rangers. That didn't happen. The Rangers swept them pretty convincingly. The biggest storyline from the series probably is that Ovechkin had a goose egg, no goals, no assists. First time in his career. Man, that's tough to see. I think this is the end of the line for the Capitals. I was surprised they made it in this year. I mean, you look at the metrics, they probably shouldn't have. Worst goal differential to ever make the playoffs in a long time. I mean, what can you say? One thing that was tough to see, TJ Oshie playing with a bunch of injuries. I think he had a broken hand and a back injury that was bothering him for pretty much a whole series, but he played through it because, like I said, Capitals might not get another playoff appearance in the Ovechkin era. There's a good chance Oshie played his last playoff game. Who knows what he's even going to be able to do next year, if he's even going to be able to play at that back injury. Is as bad as it sounded. Pretty tough to see, but the Capitals, they had a good run. They finally got that cup. It's a lot less painful for Ovechkin and for those guys to go down if this is the end of the road for them, knowing they have that cup in 2018. Obviously, you want more, but it's a lot easier having at least that one. But for the Rangers, not really sure what we've seen from them yet. Obviously, I'm recording this during Game 2 of their series with the Hurricanes. The game's 2-2 right now. The Stars came out to play for the Rangers. Zibanejad, Panarin, Kreider, those guys have looked really, really good to start the year, or to start the playoffs. Lafreniere's got 2 goals tonight. Still waiting to see more out of Capo Caco. I still wonder if the Rangers lose in the second round to Carolina, what's going to happen with Caco. I think Lafreniere, he had, 27 goals this year. He's coming back. He's really secured his spot, really starting to establish himself. You still want more out of a first overall pick, but he's shown that he can get to that point. He's still super young. But Caco, man, he's had opportunities. He's been here since 2019. You still haven't seen quite enough out of him. I think it's time to move on. I think you need a change of scenery for both parties. But let's see what happens. Let's see what they can do in that second round. And like I said, in that second round, they're going to play the Carolina Hurricanes. I nailed the series as well. 1-5 against the Islanders. I was really confused with the Islanders this series. I could not believe that they went with Semyon Varlamov starting a majority of the series over Ilya Sorokin, who you paid a huge amount of money to. Really, your golden goose, almost won the Vezina last year. Obviously, he didn't have the same year, but I feel like in the playoffs, you really got to go with your top guys. And it was really surprising to me that Patrick Waugh went with Varlamov over Sorokin. Obviously, when it comes to Patrick Waugh goaltending, I think you normally take his word for it. But you can easily question that situation now that they lost in 5. Game 2 was brutal for them, having blown that lead. It felt like they needed some sort of life to be able to have a shot in that series, and going down 2-0 like that was it. I mean, they won Game 4 in overtime, but that was it. This Islanders team, looking at the core, it's not a lot different than the teams that made the conference final in 2020 and 2021. But it just feels like they lost their luster a little bit. It feels like they jumped the shark when they fired Barry Trotz. There was reports about Matt Barzal having issues with him. Obviously, Barzal's your guy. They went with him over Trotz. But man, they just don't seem like the same Islanders teams of old. I really wonder what the outlook is for them as well. The Eastern Conference is such a bloodbath right now. There's a lot of young teams that are looking to take some of these places. And it feels like the Islanders' time might be coming to an end. It feels like, the Devils had a bad year this year. They had a lot of injuries. They need goaltending. But if they can start figuring those things out, the Capitals, the Islanders, those teams might start making their way back down to the cellar of the Eastern Conference. Obviously, you don't want to see that happen, but someone's got to be at the bottom. And it feels like we're kind of seeing the end of the road for those teams. But again, with the Hurricanes, they showed a lot of resilience, especially in that Game 2 to win that series. Really curious to see how this series plays out with the Carolina Hurricanes. I wonder how long they're going to go with Freddie Anderson. I'll be honest, I'm not a Hurricanes fan, obviously. I don't watch them as intently as I watch other teams. But I was surprised to see them go with Freddie Anderson instead of Pyotr Kochetkov. It seemed like they had a really good second half of the season. But Freddie's gotten them pretty far to start out this round. We'll see how things continue with the New York Rangers. The Rangers took that first game 1-0. It's still, last I saw, was still 2-2 in this one. But I mean, in a series this tight, you really can't wait if a goalie has one bad game. Don't be surprised if we see Kochetkov in before too long, if something happens. But this is going to be a really good series. I think this is going to be the series of the playoffs. And like I said in my first video, there's been a couple of years where you can say whoever wins this series is going to win the cup. Man, I could see any 8 teams winning the Stanley Cup this year. I think this is about as stacked a second round as we've had in a long time. There's really no weak link here, which you can't really always say. Like I said, I'm going to stick with my picks that I made before the playoffs started. If I had to rank them based on how confident I am in them, I would probably say I'm most confident in the Dallas series. I think Dallas matches up with Colorado so well, and Jake Ottinger, his last 5 games were fantastic. I think they get that done. I mean, the ones I feel less confident in probably would be Vancouver, simply because of the lack of Thatcher Demko. How is that going to affect them against Edmonton? They're the hottest team in the league since basically December. They really haven't cooled off, it seems, and there's no reason to suggest they will. And I'd also say Boston and Florida, but man, Boston looked great in Game 1. They had the Panthers at the palm of their hands last year. They blew that 3-1 lead. I picked them mostly because I think they've got some demons to exercise. And man, if Game 1 was any indication, they're off to a pretty good start. But man, this Carolina-New York series can go either way. I'm really excited to watch the rest of these games and just kind of enjoy playoffs, man. I love playoff hockey more than about anything in this world. And I still think we're in for an all-time quarterfinal, conference final, and Stanley Cup final this year. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. What series are you most excited for? Which players have you been really impressed by? Which players have you been disappointed in? And do you have any bold predictions for the rest of the way? So let me know. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.